Whew, man. It's Friday. Friday. Fun day, right? Fun day. Fun days all around. Cool topic for this episode. Why? Why is it a cool topic? Because somebody said, hey, can you do this cool topic? So I said, yeah, I can do this cool topic. What do you want the cool topic to be? And they said the reality of forensic psychology. I asked why. So they said, well, because aren't you a forensic psychology guy? I said, yes. Graduate degree, master's degree. Yep. Science of criminal justice with a concentration in forensic psychology. Then follow on after first terminal of forensic mediological death. Second terminal, psychology. Yeah. Focus on trauma. Good times. So let's get on with this, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a fast-paced show. Hold on to your brains. Hold on to your buckets. Now, remember, this is no replacement for a classroom whatsoever. Not whatsoever. Period. Done. Over. So don't think that you're going to get a whole semester or a whole 4-year set conundrum of information just from this one episode or just from this one show, because it is not going to happen. Period. Whatsoever. So, but still, put your thinking hats on. And for those of you that are in the world of, the sciences of psychology and sociology, and you want to pick up on something and learn something that's cool, fandangoed, high speed on a Friday afternoon, or just for a simple refresher from this guy right here. This guy. So let's shift over and let's open up some stuff. First of all, let's make sure everything's up. All right, we're on YouTube, X, and Rumble. Live chats are open, so punch them in. Let them rip, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to cover a few popular cases in the past 30 days internationally, as well as get definitive information on the actual topics that we're going to be talking about. So let it go. But first, before we get off on this wild chase, forensic psychology, society being they, all right, them, they, those. Imagine a psychologist standing over a crime scene with a set of headphones on, listening to the repertoire of what's going on in their brain, putting the whole scene together with Jack the chaotic manipulator killing something. No, that's not the way it works, all right? That's bull crapo. That's what you see in Hollywood, okay? There is no psychologist that's going to be on a crime scene trying to assess the mind of a killer or a whimsical marauder of mayhem. It's not going to happen this way. Real forensic psychology is way less theatrical. It's far more consequential than anything else, meaning the consequences for the missed attrition, the misdiagnosis. When you're supposed to be paying attention, but what you're paying attention to, you're not listening to. You're not using your education. A forensic psychologist may be asked whether a defendant understands the charges. Cognitive, consequential, cognitive. It's kind of like law enforcement and criminal investigators. When you're in the interrogation room and suddenly the interview becomes accusatory, that's when the interview turns into an interrogation. It is accusatory. So all of you that get locked up and get handcuffs in the future, and you're in that small room with an investigator, when it starts becoming accusatory, now it's interrogation. Everything else is a symbiotic circle of speech. The forensic psychologist has to understand this, but understand the depth of the interview, the symbiotic circle, as well with the questioning technique to get the information out that matches means, manner, intent, mens rea, actus rea, so that the psychologist can feed it to the investigator, all right, and or disclose it with expertise, expert testimony, as verdict by the judge, the gatekeeper, to testify as an expert. So therefore, the psychologist's testimony is allowed to be entered as evidence. So a psychologist simply, can this person understand what they're hearing? Do they understand the charges? Do they understand their privileges, their rights under the Constitution as it's been explained to them? Whether reported symptoms are genuine, whether they're artificial, whether they're understandable, it's all subject to the psychologist that is feeding the information to the law enforcement officers. Witnesses, the worst piece of evidence on the planet. I don't care what kind of case it is. I don't care if it's a murder. I don't care if it's a stolen car. I don't care if it's subject to somebody that jumped on this channel and jumped off because they want a doom and gloom channel. Yeah, fear. intimidation, emotion. When a psychologist is trying to find this for a forensic examination of a subject, a suspect, the presentation of the information has to be manipulatable. What's the risk for future violence of voice in the interviewee's mind? Things we have to understand that are possibly triggers and increases that dilapidate the investigation. A person can appear calm, but there's still serious risk. The subject, the suspect, calm all day long, there's still risk. A person can appear disturbed without being legally insane. A person can be disturbed, emotionally distraught, mens rea, developmental pretext of understanding the consequence, but not have any empathy for the consequence, even if the consequence is self-harm. The psychologist has to understand this, even if the subject or the person in question is lying to investigators. Yes, I understand my rights and privileges under the Constitution, but they really don't. So they're agreeing to manipulate the law enforcement officer, right? Manipulate the law enforcement officer because they, them, the subject, the suspect, knows more than the law enforcement, the investigator, the detective does. The rest the investigator has to pull out. That's not a prescribed mental disorder or mental illness. Self-loathing, self-worth, self-resilience of suffering, self. Some people like the self-suffering, kind of like those that hurt themselves or harmed themselves, cutting and stutter cutting. The central problem in the courts want clear answers. Juries want clear answers. Why? Jurors are not the most intelligent creatures on the face of the earth. They are not. That's why attorneys have jury selection, prosecutor, defense. There's a jury selection series. Some jurors that are taxed with that jury subpoena or to show for selection, pretty smart, but that does not make them intelligent, and that does not make them the top juror to select for a specific case or a specific venue. Psychological science usually provides probabilities, limitations. It's a complex competition of explanations. Complex competition of explanations. Why? Cross-examination. Just because prosecution has a forensic psychologist, that does not mean defense cannot gain a hired gun, a forensic psychologist, to work in aid for that one being represented in a courtroom by what? Counsel, the defendant, that one being prosecuted. So let's crack on with this for a moment or two. Let's open this up. Now, like I said, this is no replacement for a classroom, so please don't think it is. And I'm going to make this a little bigger so everybody can see it. There we go. There we go. Put it in the chat if you can see it. Give it a thumbs up. Do something. Let me know. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to cover a few things real quick. Like I said, this is not a replacement or substitute for a classroom. It's just a basic foundation for those that want to know. Plus, it was a challenge. What do forensic psychologists actually do? All right, a forensic psychologist applies psychological science to the question, all right, defined by the word of law, the legislative law, executive, judicial, legislative. What law has been violated? What is the diagnosis? What is the psychological science as it is applied to or defined by a law that has been violated? Mens rea, the mind. Actus rea, the act itself. They don't just do simple diagnosis of a person, okay? They don't just simply diagnose one attribute of one person. The forensic psychologist evaluates the specific legal ability, condition, behavioral questioning using records of the actual subject or records of the one that is being charged, interviewed, interrogated, the interviews, the testing, the collateral information, the scientific research, psychology, sociology, neurology, right? Brain scans, brain imaging. What is the dilapidation of the individual that is being interviewed or the individual that is being assessed in the moment for mental illness, mental impairment, psychological deformation? The legal question is the control of the evaluation. A person may have schizophrenia, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, most common people know it as PTSD, or an intellectual ability, an intellectual dilapidation, ADHD, cognitive awareness disability, something that prevents a person from, in layman terms, growing mentally, psychologically, brain, intelligence, cognitive ability, reason, interpretation. But the diagnosis alone does not answer whether the person is completely criminal responsible for the action that was, that took place, that they're being charged with, or if they're dangerous or not. It doesn't. The psychologist has to connect psychological evidence to the exact legal standard of involvement. Psychology, psychological, the sciences, state law violation. Example, domestic violence. Verbal, physical, psychological. Verbal, physical, psychological go together, but it can still be psychological, but it's only verbal. It can still be psychological, but it's physical to the victim, but the victim only feels the physical side of it, not the psychological side of it, right? Not that, in layman's term, the inner voice in the head, all right? The devil made me do it. We did an episode kind of like that a while back. Forensics and clinical psychology have different goals. Forensics is preparation for presentation using the disciplines and the practitioner skill set of those trained in specific disciplines. Example, dentistry, rape, assault, bite mark, extra school, forensic odontology, right? Entomology, insects, bugs, dead body, blowflies, insects, maggots, forensic entomology for the death scene, forensic psychology. So you're looking at clinical differences in the specific roles that are taking place in psychological evaluation. Clinical psychologists ordinarily work to help a patient, not prosecute a patient, not send them to prison, not put them in a jail cell. Just the way it is. It's clinical aid. It is some may say, pseudoscience, bunk science, but psychological, hate to break the news to everybody, but I'm just going to, I don't hate to break the news. I'm just going to be blunt with you. If your brain is dilapidated and you do not have the education, you are not going to be a plethora genius to come up with the new SpaceX rocket, all right? That's just kind of the way it is. Bottom dadgum line, all right? You're not going to be the substitute for the practitioners that have specific skill sets that can represent an argument in the courtroom with forensic preparation for presentation to the jury. The worst piece of court exclusionary inclusion on the earth, regardless of what the judge says, it's still the words have weight on the jury's mind, the jury's thought. Even if they were instructed not to include it in their decision, a jury member can find a way to manipulate it. Thus, the psychologist, the interpretation, a way to help the patient. All right. Forensic psychologists work to provide an objective opinion in a courtroom, to a court, or other legal decision makers. Now, one would think that forensic psychologist, like you would see on the actual big screen or TV show, is going to be in a courtroom all the time. That's the only place you're going to see it. No, wrong answer. With the agencies, in quarters, in chambers, with judges, with both counsel, prosecution, and defense. Outside of the marker, training investigators, talking to investigators. What about, specific needs and entities for victimization? One would think that a forensic psychologist would only focus on the criminal aspect. No. In my career, I have found through my investigations, my cases, that the mentally dilapidated and or mentally ill fell to victimization more so than the mental ill were the victimizers. This is the way it works in reality of society, because someone with that mental dilapidation may not cognitively understand what's happening in the present moment. They may not understand why. And a lot of times it's not that you don't understand what's happening. You understand what's happening. You just can't understand why it's happening specifically to you. That's the biggest argument in society. Why did this happen? What did I do to deserve this? Society's asking this. What did I do to deserve jury duty? Well, maybe you were too stupid to get off of jury duty. Who knows? Multiple sources of evidence are needed. Yeah. In any case that requires forensic psychology, well, forensic psychology or psychological evaluation. Multiple levels of evidence. It's not just arguable down to one aesthetic of the forensic examiner is the say all, do all, end all. It doesn't work that way, ladies and gentlemen. It's just not the way it's going to be. Let's open something up. Oh yeah, this we actually got it. The hypothesis, like psychological assessment in forensic settings, a new methodology, conceptions, and ethical considerations. If you want this, send me an email. I'll send you a whole list and a whole gambit of stuff for you to actually review to acquaint yourself with forensic psychology, the true inside and the true outside of it. Like I said, this is no replacement for a classroom. Now we got another one. Ethical and professional considerations in forensic assessment and the complex trauma of dissociation. Why is this so critical? Why is this such a good article for everyone to read and understand how forensic psychology applies to you, the innocent person, the sweet person, the one with no criminal conviction or criminal charge whatsoever? Because you dissociate. You're always going to dissociate. You're always going to do something. Well, I see the node just kicked on. Awesome. Moderators, you're like 10 minutes late. Yep, the node's on. It's running pretty good. It's an internal university chat node, guys. Up to the side, right up there. So, dissociate. Everyone dissociates, all right? Experts inform, but they do not replace. An expert, a forensic psychologist, can't identify the mens rea when someone has dissociated themselves from the moment, being a victim, being suspect, and they can also identify the mitigating underlying factors or circumstances that would contribute to the dissociation. Meaning, everyone's heard not guilty by reason of insanity. Everybody's heard the myths and the legends of the mom saving children from the car that's flipped over. Suddenly the mom has superhuman strength and lifts the car. There's a reason. Something's going on. There's a chemical imbalance. There's one of the, the 5 HIAA chemicals in the brain that is taken over. Something's happening. That's what your forensic psychologist is there to help you understand. Just one aesthetic of thousands for the forensic psychologist to do. The multiple source of evidence. It's a necessity. Evaluation must include interviews, medical records, arrest records, or law enforcement, legislative contact, judicial arm of the law, so to say, surveillance footage, witness accounts. The worst piece of evidence on the planet is a witness. Any law enforcement officer that's got time in this will tell you. Employment history. Employment history is critical. Psychological testing, school records. Yeah, interaction with society, neighbors, family members. All of this is collateral verification, meaning that the person's statement, that person that is a person of interest and or suspect, that person's one individual statements can be compared and objectively assessed against independent information gained by the forensic psychologist, gained by the investigators, piled together, and yet still, with a court order or a writ, be subject to the final word of the forensic psychologist, whether it's going to be allowed as direct evidence in a trial and or a case. Now, speaking of trials and or cases, let's open something up here, because you always want to have the latest and the greatest of what's going on in the world of, forensics or the psychology evaluation that you've got going on. So let's open this up. I want everybody to get an eyeball on this. Where are you at? Right there. And I'm moving some stuff around because we have got... Where is it at? There it is, right there. Give me a moment. Making this pretty big. Now, internationally, all right, what this is kind of the top dogs international, worldwide right now, in the moment for the use of forensic psychology, forensic assessment, in multiple countries. All right, South Africa, the United States, Australia, and the UK. Example 1, Lindsay Clancy. Yep, the trial. For those of you that are paying attention to what's going on, in the world of crime and social media, criminal responsibility, postpartum psychosis, hallucinations, medication effects, premonition versus impaired reality testing. Okay. Those are multiple areas that require multiple levels of expertise. Meaning, there may not be just one forensic psychologist working this case to assess the suspect or the subject. There could be multiple forensic psychologists that are experts and are focused in specific areas of mental dilapidation, means, manner, the mens rea, criminal responsibility. That's a biggie. Thus, now the forensic psychologist is being tied in and working with law enforcement officers. What is the true criminal responsibility? Did the person truly, with intent, knowingly violate legislative law? The mens rea, the intent, the actus rea. What was the mens rea? Was there a moment of diminished capacity to where one would say not guilty by reason of insanity because of trauma, diminished capacity? Think of yourselves. Think of you in a traumatic moment or a traumatic incident in your life. Some of you have had it to where you just couldn't think. You didn't know what the heck was going on. You didn't know how to respond. And or people were around you and they told you how you responded, and you responded in a standard way or fashion that does not make sense. Diminished capacity in the moment. Yeah, the impairment, psychological, the interpretation is what it is, people. That is still dissociative. It's not dissociation with intent, but it's imbalanced dissociation. The forensic examiner, the forensic psychologist has to identify this and be able to, with common linguistic venue, argue it to the law enforcement investigators who are not trained psychologists. They're not psychological and forensic investigators. So the forensic examiner, psychological forensic examiner, the forensic expert, the forensic psychologist has to put it in words that dumb cop 1, dumb cop 2 can understand. Has to put it in lingo and words that dumb judge 1, dumb judge 2, possibly for a appeal, right? We know this. Every 1 through 12 dum-dum that's on the jury box. Yes, and I'm being 100% abrupt here. Yes, human beings, the interpretation of what you hear, knowledge, it has to be explained crystal clear, or someone's going to dissociate from the fine line of the definition that the preparation for training, preparation for presentation in a courtroom is delivering to the people. Frontal, cerebral cortex, temporal, eyes, ears, interpretation. So, dissociation. Even those that are jury members dissociate. The judge, the prosecutor. Well, the prosecutors dissociate all day long because they don't like what they're hearing from the defense end that has picked up a hired gun known as a forensic psychologist, forensic psychological examiner of behavior. Seen that a lot in prosecutors. We got one here from the United Kingdom. Dawud Safi, the knife attack proceedings, for those of you that, remember that when that happened. Then the Axel one, yep, same thing, transferred to Broadmoor, psychological and mental disorder treatments needed, institutional risk and management. Now, institutional risk and management means the institution that the actual person is in, psychologically, there's an institutional risk because they truly can't manage, because they cannot identify culture, religion, subculture, location, where the actual dilapidation and or the mental dilapidation or mental disorder was aided and or created. Think of, recruitment for a terrorist organization, right? Extremism, radicalization. It just is what it is. If you don't understand, you don't understand. If you go to a school somewhere in the United States, well, you don't understand the actual protocols for radicalization, migrating of an immigrant, be it legal or born in a specific country. There are members that perform violent acts from other countries that are born in a secondary country but would be considered their native country because they were born into that country. The United Kingdom, those that are descent from the Middle East, the United Kingdom's having problems with that right now. For those of you that don't know, do your own research. The 2 cases I just gave you are 2 cases of such. But this is just a common list. I mean, these are the top ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 worldwide. that are being argued. If you want this actual list, send me an email. I'll send it to you. Kind of got the breakdown of what's going on, forensic relevance. Let's just go to the one in the United States that's number one on the top. Lindsay Clancy. Why is this the best example here? It's diagnosis versus legal insanity. The diagnosis is one thing, the preparation for presentation clinically. The legal insanity, not guilty by reasonable insanity, culpability, understanding, consequence, good or bad. It's two different avenues, two different things that have to be discussed into a courtroom, and both of those topics lay on the table of legislative interpretation of law. Hallucination, command voice. We did a show about this in the past. Hallucination. All of you hallucinate. All of you have heard something. In your brain, you can't stop your brain to go to sleep at night because your brain's going 900 miles an hour. So by the time you put your big giant head down on your little bitty pillow, you're hallucinating something. Now, it's not like the hallucinations to where you've been awake for 18 hours and you're seeing, bicyclists bicycle off the bridge and, commit suicide. We're not talking about that type of hallucination. We're talking about false statements in your head that to you in the moment make sense, but you're tired, you're stressed out, you're mentally dilapidated about a specific traumatic situation. Exemplar: domestic violence, physical domestic violence, psychological domestic violence, command, control, the command voice. Anybody know anybody that's in a relationship to where the other half, either the male or the female, does not want them to have friends of the opposite gender? The same thing, the hallucination, the command voice, it still exists in the head even though it's not in front of you. So the forensic psychologist would have to understand this and argue that, knowing that that's two specific avenues, right? Premeditation versus psychosis. Just because the psychosis exists that's been identified under the DSM-5 or by multiple forensic avenues, that does not guarantee premeditation to commit a violent act or crime, self-harm and or harm against another person. Then again, diagnosis, legal insanity, hallucination, command voice, premeditation versus psychosis. You're looking at 6, started off with the top dog in the United States that involves forensic psychology right now. For those of you that don't know where this is at, it's on the screen. It's Massachusetts, July the 27th when the trial started. Killing her husband. Yep. Killed it. Killed her husband. Killed it. Killed that person. Let me see. Does the person know... let me see what this chat said. It just popped up. Does the person know it isn't therapy? Well, the one being interviewed, the one being spoken with, the one actually being talked to by the forensic investigator, there's a high possibility that they don't know, because the one being interviewed, the one being investigated, the one being communicated with for the forensic psychologist to make that assessment, they're not trained psychologists. They're not trained forensic psychologists. Guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, Hannibal Lecter, the psychologist of the horror trend movies, the doctor, those people do not exist in reality. If they do exist in reality, you're never going to hear about it. It's going to be hidden and swept under the rug. So those of you that would think, tinfoil hat, conspiracy theory, you're not going to hear about any of that. You're not. You're going to hear about the mainstream, attention getters, the gloom and doom, kind of like the Lindsay Clancy, medication and behavioral causation, competing expert interpretations. Thus, now your forensic examiner's competing expert. That's number one. It's right here on your screen. Well, right there on the screen. Go look it up for yourself. I'll even make it bigger so you can see it for those of you on your tiny cell phones. That's what we're talking about right there, Lindsay Clancy. So, competing experts, defense and prosecution, but maternal health versus mental health. Yeah, maternal health meaning what? Munchausen, postpartum depression. You got specific experts in the world of forensic psychology that are going to argue against each other, prosecution and defense, and it's going to be up to the judge to allow who is testifying as the expert. And here's the key critical thing. The judge, in layman terms, most of them are pretty smart people, but when it comes to true forensic psychology, identification, assessment, legislative, executive, judicial, what is the violation of law? What is the diagnosis of illegal insanity with intent to violate a legislative order and or cause self-harm or harm? The judge has no dadgum idea. The judge does not know. The judge is too concerned with the flow, the format, the methodology of the court, and allowing one to speak and or the words that are being used, inflammatory, he said, she said, someone with credentials and or verdict to testify in that courtroom, and the decision of the judge to allow the jury to use that legal testimony as an item of evidence to help formulate a decision of guilt. That is your forensic psychologist. That's a lot of weight. Now, the weight on both prosecution and defense. Imagine two forensic psychologists. Imagine in the world that you love, mainstream media, movies. Imagine two psychologists at the level of the great Hannibal Lecter banging it against each other, their brains, defense and prosecution in a courtroom. Multiply that. That's a lot. The judge is not going to keep up with that. I hate to break the news to you. That's just reality, people. But number one worldwide, Lindsay Clancy. And number two, Axel Rodamore transfer, the one in England. Southport child murders. We talked about that one. Adam Tor, the Georgia Hope case. Tasmania, Australia, another one. Melbourne man, the rape. Alette Rose, psychiatric evaluation, South Africa. And guys, these are the ones you don't hear about in the mainstream media, but these are the top dogs worldwide. Smith Elevation, South Africa. Supreme Court juvenile psychological diagnosis, India. So for those of you that are like, none of this stuff happens worldwide. Well, it happens worldwide. You just don't hear about it because it's not something that's mainstream in the United States. It's not main focal topic. Why? You're going to hear about it in India. If you're in India, it's kind of like Rome. If you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. You're going to hear about what the Romans are doing. That's just the way it's going to work. Competency to stand trial. Man, competency to stand trial. Youth, adults, the fairness. Is it functional? Is the meaning of the trial to truly form another investigation in front of a jury? No, that's not it. So the actual forensic examiners have to be prepared for the presentation based on the evaluation, based on the case itself. Number one is capability, culpability, and recognition of violating a law with intent to cause harm to another. And the number one responsibility, hate to break your bubbles and make all of you upset, is going to be the patient themselves, even if it's Jack the Ripper or Jack the mass rapist. The forensic psychologist has an ethical bound standpoint. It can't be done to harm, it can't be done to manipulate, and it can't be done to propagandize the client. Even though they're a suspect, even though there's somebody that is in jail, have been indicted, awaiting trial, and it's multiple evaluations before trial. It's still a client, people. The law enforcement agency is the secondary client, not the primary client. Just the way it works. It's kind of like a heart patient. You have a sister, you have a brother. Well, the primary patient is your sister and your brother, or your brother that needs the heart transplant. It's not you. It's not your emotion. It's not your feelings. Even though you may have, legal power of attorney over medical, you're still not the primary client. You're just a secondary source of information. It's just the way it works. The symptom, the performance, the validity. All right. Symptom validity concerns whether reported psychological symptoms are presented accurately. Thus, forensics, and I'm going to say it over and over and 1,000 times again, it's preparation for presentation. Just did a lecture with the Global Forensics Guild, Science Guild, I think a week and a half ago. Spoke about this there worldwide. It's preparation for presentation. Period. You have to be able to articulate the actual symptoms and present them accurately. The judge does not know. The jury does not know. The prosecutor does not know. The defense does not know. And be damned, you, the investigator, the law enforcement officer, you don't know unless you go to secondary education or follow on grad school in a specific realm of psychological training, psychology. And just because you go that direction does not make you a forensic analysis of mental behavior. It does not make you a forensic psychologist. So the symptoms and everything that's found, assessed, identified, diagnosed has to be presented correctly in a court of law. Thus, preparation for presentation. Performance validity of the forensic psychologist. That's a major concern. Concerns whether the person is applying under genuine effort during the conviction, during the convening of the trial, during the convening of the grand jury. Why? Because during all of this, the convening of psychological testing is happening. Yes, I've seen cases to where the crime happens. I get the call, got the text. Back in my day, we started with pagers, right? You pick up your phone and you call the department. Then we graduated up to Blackberries and all that good stuff. So we get it. We hear it, show up to the scene, work the scene, take someone in custody. Boom, right there. A trigger in your head. If you have extensive training or follow-on training, we're going to need to get a writ for psychological volume and or award for or mental hold for a writ eval, because mentally it's not here. You've got to understand that. Even you as a law enforcement with basic law enforcement training from an academy, you're not going to get that. Investigator, you should get that somewhere. A certified investigator program, a follow-on program, you should get it. At that point in time, it's not a stopper for you to continue your investigation. It's definitely not a stopper for you to continue your interview and interrogation and go into Miranda. Kind of like the world doesn't understand. What's the difference between custody and detainment? Miranda, period. Fifth Amendment. Fauci. We're just going to change that to Fauci. We'll change that. Instead of fifth, we'll change it to Fauci. I like that. That's pretty cool. All right. The malingering effect. All right. Psychological testing means internally producing or exaggerating obtained compensation. Yeah. Malingering. The badgering, verbal. Oh, I'll tell you I did it if you'll just shut up. Yes. An internal and external relief, the symptoms, the external and internal belief that one did something. One is genuinely accurate on the interpretation that they're hearing. Yeah, I'm hearing this. So temporal, they're telling me what happened. Yes, detective, I did that. Yes, I killed little Timmy with a chainsaw. Yeah. The malingering, badgering. That's something. It's a flaw. It's a fault in criminal investigation. It's something that the forensic examiner, the forensic psychologist is going to have to work around. And what is that going to do? It's going to piss off cops. It's going to piss off detectives. It's going to piss off investigators. I've seen so many criminal investigators get pissed at psychological, professionals. And that at the end of the day, the cops were 100% freaking wrong. Receiving receiving medification. That's a word I just made up right now. Why? Med and information. Medification. Information and the medicine all comes together. Receiving medical information, so to say, privilege of warrant, privilege of signed with consent to take the paperwork to the hospital. Medification. All right? All the information you're going to get. You're an investigator. You're not going to understand what the hell you're looking at. I hate to break the news to you. You're not a medical doctor. The forensic psychologist is medical in a specific avenue. There's a difference between psychiatrist and psychologist. Psychiatrist, medical push. Psychologist, non-medical push. Forensic psychologist, very well entwined in with psychiatrists. So now they have the means of information, dissemination of the medical documentation to interpret what law enforcement has, what it's for. The effect, over-medication. Anybody know anybody that over-medicates and their behavior becomes erratic, becomes weird? Well, another role for the forensic psychologist, right? Receiving medication, changing housing conditions, changing behavior, changing relationship, changing job, changing school, changing live stream channels, whatever it may be. The influx and the exaggeration of the information coming into the person's brain, the suspect, the person of interest, and the forensic psychologists themselves. Let alone the investigators. I know, everybody's like, man, he's always slamming investigators. Well, I can. Yeah. Do your background on me. I can. Slam them all day long. Let's go in with ethics of the forensic psychologist and allegations. Yeah. Adversarial allegations and neutrality. All right. Adversarial allegations occur when the expert's ongoing opinions drift toward the interest of the side that retained the expert. Now, here's the bad thing. If you're prosecution, you can pick up and hire a hired gun forensic, practitioner to testify, preparation for presentation. But always remember, the defense can too. That's when the weight has to be evaluated. That's when the judge has to have some level of expertise at something, but unfortunately, judges don't. Why? Because judges stand two ways in the United States, liberal and righty. That's the way it is. That's all you ever hear, man. That is it. Stop me if I'm lying. A conservative judge, a leftist judge, that's all you hear. That's all you hear, because society's focused on that. Where's the venue? Let's petition for a change of venue for this specific case because the adversarial allegations are left up to expert retention of the prosecution or of the defense. Well, the defense is liberal, the judge is liberal, so the defense is going to win the case. Why even take it to trial? Yeah. You don't think that's happened in the United States? Oh, it's happened more so than you think, especially in 2026. Next, confirmation of the biased. Confirmation of the biased. What would be the confirmation of the bias? How do we confirm the bias? I'm going to shut this one vertical screen down. We don't need it anymore. Confirmation of the biased can lead, so to say, to the elevation of searched for information supporting an early theory, but not the true evidence as it's being presented in a courtroom. Discounting conflicting evidence, so to say. Shove it to the side, not really listen to it. Now, one would argue that based on the Shiloh situation in a specific state with a specific Somali problem and a word that was said, and then what happened? The attorney got on mainstream TV. The breakdown of the court. Now, that's just an example, all right? So you don't want to be a white girl with blonde hair in a state that's got a lot of fraud focus and migrant focus from a country that is predominantly black or dark skinned and say a specific N-word because your defense attorney's not going to get what they wanted. Now it's going to go into mainstream media. The same thing is going to happen with a case that is left-wing, right-wing, or argued in a specific venue or jurisdiction, and there are opposing opinions. The bias, the confirmation or confrontation. Confrontation's always going to be there, but where's the confirmation of the bias? Will the forensic analyst, will the law enforcement cave in? Kind of like that police chief just caved in and let the guy come in and take over the room and start ramping on stuff? Yeah. He needs to have a forensic psychologist eval him. Forensic experts should identify the evidence reviewed, methodologies, methods used, and evaluate law enforcement's methodologies and methods used for getting information, linguistic and or physical kinetic behavior. Period. Alternative explanations must be considered. What developed? What is the reason for the mens rea? What is the reason or the means of the psychological shift, the psychological impairment? It's not just one. I mean, you got the most popular case in the United States for a forensic psychologist, and there are at least 10 avenues of dual-sided argument and 10 avenues of needed specific expertise at a forensic level. So it doesn't just go with one level of bias, people. It's huge. A forensic psychologist has a big plate and a big venue that they have to attend to. It's not just attending to the law enforcement. It's attending to your freaking opinion after it's all done. How many times in reality have you argued or bitched or complained about, I didn't like the way that case turned out, but you really didn't know the aesthetics of the case and what was the psychological consultation that happened underneath the table? That's a forensic analyst, a forensic psychologist, but you didn't even know anything happened at the forensic psychologist plateau or level for forensic evidence, forensics preparation for presentation. Why? Because it wasn't disseminated through the media. Why is that? The bias of what? Violation. HIPAA information. Even though it's a perceived bad person, suspect, or subject of interest for a violent crime, still have the limitation of what? Medical privilege and or dissemination and or release. So you're not going to hear anything about the forensic psychologists that were used on defense and prosecution. You're not going to hear it, people. You may hear a little bit of it, but you're not going to be exacerbated to death with the linguistics of your favorite podcast shows all day long about it. Why? It's boring. Nobody's going to focus on that. You want to hear the shooter and the hot smoking gun. That's what you want to hear. The strongest expert is not necessarily the expert who sounds most certain either, people. I'm not talking Fauci. I'm talking smooth, standard language, speaking, right? Inferaneous, experience, knowledge, practitionership skill, versus the one who's got the flair for the lingo, kind of like a live streamer, kind of like a podcaster. Everybody watches it. Anybody watch a podcast that really can't talk that well, but the shit that comes out of their mouth makes sense? It's the way it is in a courtroom. Scientifically responsible. Scientific testimony. Yes, psychological. It's not just what's in your brain and you can't put your big fat head down to sleep on your little tiny pillow. It's what's physically happening to your brain. We've had past episodes about this too. Effects of the brain, the neuroscience of the brain, the hallucinate voice in your head. Go back, watch a few of the live streams we had. We even had MRI scans and explained it, how it works. Amygdala, frontal cerebral cortex, temporal side. We explained it all, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, go back and watch it again. So scientific responsibility, it's one of the big responsibilities of the forensic practitioner in the psychological field. It would be a forensic psychologist. Yes. Now, someone's thinking, I got a question the other day. How long does it take to become a forensic psychologist? I've been in school for 15 years. Well, I was in school for 15 years, put it that way. 15 years plus working full-time law enforcement and military. Active. Well, I was guard at the time when I went to law enforcement, got out of active duty, but deployment, 15 years worth of education. I agree that forensic psychologists answer legal questions instead of reading minds. They change how I say it. Well, that changes how I say it. Yeah. Nobody can read your mind, but the legal word of law has to be affiliated with the defining pretext, linguistic venue of the forensic psychologist. The judge does not know. There is no judge in the United States or on the dadgum globe, trust me, that can understand all aspects of legal culpability, capability that has to be argued under the determination of judicial, legislative, and evidentiary rules of law in a state or at a federal system, be it U.S. or worldwide. They do not know. They don't. That's why there are jurisdictional set judges, city judges, county judge, specific courts with specific judges. It's got to be a specific judge that understands the linguistic venue and the scientific preparation for presentation of the forensic analyst, the forensic psychologist. Judges do not understand the words that are coming out of their mouth. So it's going to have to be interpreted for the judge to understand in simpleton terms, just like it's going to have to be delivered to the jury. The judge is the one that allows the jury to accept the words of the forensic psychologist as testimonial evidence to be allowed for decision making. That's just the way it works. Yeah, guys, the node's running here. I keep coming back to competency and criminal responsibility deal with different times and different legal questions. That changes how I say. Yeah, well, there's always different legal questions, guys. Different. I mean, we just covered this a couple of minutes ago. The definition of fitness to stand trial, the definition of fitness to interpret, mens rea, causation, inflammatory words that are used in an interview and interrogation by an investigator to get someone to confess. Yeah, if there's a psychological impairment or a derivative or something that is an actual applied incident or a applied psychological impairment, yeah, it's easy. If you're a law enforcement officer or a detective and you understand it and you know it, yeah, you can manipulate it. What do you think the prosecutor's doing? What do you think the defense attorney's doing? Remember, prosecution can have a forensic psychologist. Defense can have a forensic psychologist. And it's a dual-edged, double-sided razor blade. Look at the Charlie Kirk trial. What do you think's going on there behind the smoking mirror and glass of exploding microphone BS? Yeah, you got ballistic ding-dongs out there. Look at my YouTube video. We shot a leg or a roast or a ham. Stupid. Yeah. Stupid. And I can say it because I teach ballistics. Yeah, it's one of my specialties. It's what I've been doing for years. But not my topic. Not my case I worked. And so to close this out, can someone be mentally ill but competent to stand trial? Yes, you can be bat Looney Tune crazy by the DSM-5 or assessment identity by a forensic psychiatrist, forensic psychologist, and you can still stand trial. Yes. Does that mean one is going to get the electric chair, capital punishment, death? Depends on the state, depends on the legislative word of law within the state. It also depends on United States Supreme Court decision about mentally impaired, handicap, and or mental dilapidation for cases that have been argued up to the Supreme Court with set precedent, opinion, and decision. Opinion and decision are two different things. Opinion, Roe versus Wade, send it back to the states. Opinion, there was not a decision made and everybody lost their crap and had protests about that. Well, you're protesting the government. Now you just need to shut up and start over and protest against your states. Same thing, same venue for this one. Yes, you can be found guilty. DSM-5 assessed, capability, culpability, broken, insane, schizophrenia, paranoid delusion, psychopathia. Yes, still stand trial and still be convicted, even with the diagnosis. Does the malingering, what does this message say? I just got something through email, guys. Does malingering mean everything the person reports is false? No. It's not. That's not what it means. Think of a genuine mental illness and a deliberate, 100% with intent and or purpose exaggeration of an incident. All right, together. All of you turn your little fish into a big fish. You turn your small problems into big problems. Anybody know somebody that comes into the room after the argument has stopped? It's over, but they ensue the argument, right? They're an excitement. They're a fuel on the fire. They're an exaggeration, an exaggerate of the situation. Yes, that's what's going on. You do it yourself. Society does it. You can't sleep at night. You can't shut off the voice in the head, the hallucinogen, the voice talking to you. It's an exaggerate. It's growing. So therefore you can't go to sleep when you know you've got a busy day tomorrow. You're doing it. That's what is happening. It's a malingering effect. Law enforcement can malinger in the interview and interrogation. You can malinger against somebody you don't like. Have you ever been in a car driving and then suddenly the day after an argument, you remember, if I would have just said this or brought this up, I would have shut them down and I would have won that argument. So you want to malinger into that state that kept you and your giant head awake the previous night from contacting your tiny pillow, and you want to become the aggregate of malingering and causing the whole fire to erupt again. Yeah, no. It's not a false report. It's a reality. It's the hallucination. It was the hallucinogen, the voice in the head. It's concerning. It's traumatizing to everyone. I'm just kind of going through side messages, guys. Can psychologists determine guilt? No, a psychologist cannot determine guilt. No, 100%. A psychologist can evaluate for mental functionality, mental behavior, but guilt remains still legislative, okay? Judicial. Executive, legislative, judicial. The executives you vote for write the judiciary legislative word of law. The judiciary touches law enforcement investigators, the ones that get the 911 calls to come lock up the bad, crazy people in layman terms, or the suspects. No. Forensic psychologists cannot determine guilt. A psychologist cannot determine guilt. Anybody that is a practitioner that would be used as evidentiary venue for a jury to hear, consider as direct evidence, and they're at the psychological, sociological, or mediological, no, they're not there to determine guilt. They cannot determine guilt. That is set by legislative word of law. Let's take one more. I'm going through some here, guys. I get emails from universities, and I got, some stuff coming on the node. Honestly, one interview should not outweigh rewards. Testing behavior and collateral information, that changes. Yeah, it should change how you see it. Interview and interrogation. It's kind of like I'll give you immunity. No, immunity is offered, but one can't ask. Immunity is not an offer thing for you to choose. Immunity is given whether you like it or not. And there are 5 levels of immunity, people. They think, well, immunity, I'm not going to be prosecuted. Under which of the 5? 5 levels of immunity. 5. Matter of fact, let's look this up real quick. I just said this, and this is something good for the mentally dilapidation. All right. 5. Let me come up real, guys. 5 sequential levels of immunity defense in the human body are, no, not human body, of criminal. I'm glad you asked this question. I'm glad it's in that actual node right there. All right, here we are. I'm going to bring this up. Now, think about this and how it applies to a psychological venue of immunity with somebody with a mental disorder. Does it change everything? Does the interview, does the behavior, does the weight? Can absolve be offered, so to say? Witness testimony, official status immunities, yeah, those can be offered to somebody that actually has a mental impairment. So this goes back to the original question that someone said, can someone be mentally ill but be found competent to stand trial? The answer is yes, but can the immunity be brought to the actual table? We've all heard of not guilty by reason of insanity, right? There you go, immunity. Look it up for yourself, 5 levels of criminal immunity. Look it up. It applies. Now you can have some dumb jack freaking attorney out there saying, no, that doesn't apply. That guy, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And I'm about to prove it to you. Immunity with, and we're just using, let me see, okay. Cowler versus Kansas, that is one, ruled 6-3. Due process clause 15th Amendment does not require to adopt an insanity test based whether or not the defendant could distinguish right and wrong. So yeah, it can be argued immunity within somebody that's been diagnosed with a mental illness, mental dilapidation, or a forensic psychologist has been argued to use prosecution and or offense, double-edged sword, so to say. That would be the hired gun. So there you go, all of you billboard scholars. They're saying, no, immunity doesn't apply for mental dilapidation or mental dementia. Yes, it does. Yeah, United States Supreme Court would argue differently. Oh, I can go through and list them out. Send me an email. I'll send you a whole damn list. Email, drmikeleeg@gmail.com. So we closed that out with a little bit of pretext. Where's my mod? Where are you at? Send me a sod. That's the distinction. Yes, that's the distinction. Yeah, the distinction is you can do both. I would assume that's what you're referring to. East Tennessee. I know who you are. You need to change your name. Should the officer running the line up know who the suspect is? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Should know who the suspect is, because why? You still have to prevent bias in the photo lineup, be it a 6 lineup or an 8 lineup. So yeah, you should know who the questionable suspect is. You should have all their information. The answer to that is yes. I can picture my childhood kitchen and my sister says half of it's all wrong. Well, the hallucinogen voice in your head, right? The memory recall, episodic memory recall, hippocampus, amygdala, right? The magical drawers that open up with the data. That's why witnesses are wrong. You were there, man. You with blue collar site. Yeah, you're all wrong. You were there. Your sister's wrong. So now it's the debate. Oh my gosh, it's the defense and the prosecution, scholars fighting with each other. There you go. Proof. Right there in the node chat. Thanks. Hours of questioning, exhaustion, fear, youth, and thinking you can go home. If you agree, it starts making sense. Yeah, well, it's the aggregate, the use of it, the adversal, so to say, allegiance to coercion. Who's going to profit? Is it going to be the defendant or the person of interest? Or is it going to be the cops, the law enforcement agency? Trust me, that is honestly terrifying. Yeah, it is terrifying. What, the Supreme Court can offer somebody immunity? Or that somebody can be aggregately coerced into doing something and still be found capable of standing trial and still be found guilty, even though they do have a genuine GBMI. Yeah, guilty but mentally ill. Guilty but mentally ill. GBMI. So, United States Supreme affirmation. Remember that. So, before you get to arguing with people about your favorite kooky cool TV show about forensic psychology or forensic psychologists, just remember, it's not what it is on the TV, people. It goes way deeper than that. We've got a pub out. I've got a pub release too. Let me do this. Let me go to standby. I want to bring something up so everybody can see it. It's on our Facebook page. I got my cursor right here on it. I don't know if you can see my cursor. I don't know if I have my cursor blocked on view for streaming or what, but it's on the CJTV, Dr. Mike Gurley, CJTV, lowercase JTV. Go download it, review it. It's there for you to use, there for you to have information. It's there for the scholars. It's also loaded up on my LinkedIn page too. It's there too. And if you want it, anybody that wants it, send me an email. But when you hit the actual link, it takes you to the media file, top right, download, hit the button, boom, goes straight to you into your download, and use it for those of you that are in your graduate degree programs and or undergraduate degree programs in psychology. Feel free, man. We do not make any money on this show whatsoever. Semester's about to kick up, so we'll be getting other scholars, other researchers, undergraduate and graduate university developing scholars on the show too. But if you do want to donate, because we're trying to get some money for our new printer, there's that right up there, the money thing. That's the sign. I'm not trying to push it, but it would be cool to have another printer for a specific regional center for this specific means, CJTV. Other than that, thanks for watching the show. It is Friday. I'm taking the weekend off so I can pick back up Monday. I've got things I've got to do on my land and things I've got to get finished before the semester starts off. Remember, forensic psychology. You can't read minds. Forensic psychology doesn't read mind. It can't guarantee or predict future behavior. That it's not going to do. It cannot convert a diagnosis into guilt or a guilty plea. It can't. It's not going to do it. It's not going to make a witness remember something perfectly. Yeah, isn't that right? I remembered my kitchen wrong. Yep. Last and not least, it cannot turn into an algorithm of the brain unless it's a natural truth. Mental illness is a natural truth. Diminished capacity is a natural truth. Mens rea, actus rea, natural truths. So it's not going to shift and it's not going to change. The forensic psychology aspect of it cannot change that. It's identifying psychological variables with the means to aid law enforcement in specific venue of investigation. That's what it is. When someone starts believing they may have committed the act, often the confusion or after confusion or suggested pressure. Yeah, that's true. Interview and interrogation. What do you think it is? It's stressful. We got a past episode about that too. There are even shorts about that. I think we got like over 1,500 hits on that one short about those that are on the run and are going to be interviewed and interrogated. Mental dilapidation. Oh my God. Demod put a witness memory, confession, both, neither. Which evidence is most vulnerable to suggestion? Eyewitness memory. Yeah, witness, because it's the worst piece of evidence on the earth. A witness. Witnesses are horrible. Physical witness. Confessions. Yeah, confessions are interpretable, even written confessions, because it's linguistic venue put on paper. Both, 31, neither. Yeah, neither's should be Lauren 4. There's always something there. There's always an algorithm to it, and always a means and a reason. Exactly. No arguing later about what happened before the confession. Yeah, that's subject to a deeper argument too. All right, the paper's available. Go download it. Go hit it. It's on Facebook. Thanks for showing up. I'll see everybody Monday. Like I said, we're doing the weekend off. We got some cool topics coming up for this new semester. And like I said, it's not a replacement for a classroom, but it is something intended and designed for you to use in your classroom and your career fields. And this is nowhere near the breaking the crumb of the top of the cake for forensic psychology, not by any means. Like I said, 15 years for me in school. 15. It's a long time, ladies and gentlemen. But it was fun. Get back in the classroom.